This meeting is called to order. Good evening and welcome to the November 19, 2018 meeting of the Southeast Duckville Board of School Directors, originally scheduled for November 15, 2018. The meeting was rescheduled due to inclement weather. Please stand and salute the flag for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Scott, may I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Gallagher?
Present.
Mrs. Irons?
Present.
Mr. McBride?
Present.
Ms. Monroe?
Present.
Mr. Wilson?
Absent.
Dr. Wilson?
Here.
Ms. Woodfolk?
Present.
Mr. Mansolet, and for Ms. Scott Robinson and Ms. Phillips?
Present.
Dr. Butts?
Present.
Mr. Diorio?
Present.
Mrs. Forbes?
Present.
Ms. Harris Johnson?
Present. I have no comments at this time as the president. Dr. Butch, do you have a superintendent's report?
Yes. First, I'm going to indicate that student rep, can I give your report first, and then I will follow up. I don't want to duplicate anything that you say. So go ahead with your student report.
Ooh, everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Ooh, that's loud. Okay, so good evening, members of the School Board of Directors, administrators, teachers, students, and community members. Here are your Academy Park High School announcements. A DC Cubed, or otherwise known as CC, dual enrollment information session was facilitated October 4th at APHS #NightNation, so students would be able to take advantage of the opportunity to gather and attain additional information on the dual enrollment program. During the past week, the following colleges and universities visited Academy Park: Rider University, Johnson & Wales, and the University of Scranton. APHS students participated in a field trip to Delaware County Community College on November 14th. The students discovered DC Cube for a day and participated in college workshops. So, for all the lovely seniors out there is a FAFSA, otherwise known as Financial Application Federal Student Aid, completion night for seniors and families today in the school library. Seniors will be able to complete the FAFSA with a representative from PHEAA and DC Cubed. For more info, please see one of our lovely counselors. Now on to the good stuff. So, the African Students Association has begun its yearly meetings for the 2018-2019 school year and plans to host its for the culture program at the end of February. Our main goal is to promote the image of Africans in American society and to also spread awareness on African lifestyle and culture. Good stuff. Now, the Renaissance program is placing emphasis on positive behavior recognition for APHS students. Students caught being good, like myself, and modeling the PBIS behavioral expectations can receive a positive referral. The administrators will give the kids a free pass to a sporting event or some other reward, like a snack pass. Good stuff, good stuff. The Renaissance program is dedicated to recognizing students, faculty, and staff members and celebrating our success. The Renaissance program is also starting a secret POP, and the POP stands for a pop positivity. The idea is you write a message to someone and remind them about how awesome they are, or just to wish them well. And these messages are anonymous. So if anyone wants to send me one, my first block is Miss Muller. Anywho, now some of you may be thinking, why? We're in high school. Because we're hoping that this will spread some positive vibes and kindness throughout our building. And who can send a pop? Anyone. Dr. Butts, you want to send one? Ms. Cherie, if you want to send one? Ms. Woodfolk, you want to send one? Feel free. They can be from student to student, staff to student, staff to staff, student to staff, parent to students, back to teacher night, back to school or conferences. Yes, Poetic 101. The Philly Slam League champions Poetic 101 will host Monday afternoon meetings for anyone interested in poetry, spoken word, and music. And if you are interested, or, just want a place to chill on a Monday afternoon, stop by room 241, Mr. Crenti, at 225. Everyone is welcome. Cause we love y'all. Attention artists. The art department has scholarships of $175 available for students interested in attending weekend classes at Moore College of Art, and $75 scholarships available for students interested in taking classes at Tyler School of Art. Stop by room 210 or 206 for more info. Now, as you know, we have this awesome National Honor Society, and AP gets to be one of them. Can't wait for next semester, who I can join. The NHS is offering tutoring and homework help every Tuesday, that's tomorrow, after school, until 3 o'clock in Ms. Schreider's room 220. Ah, yes, the musical. The performance of Little Shop of Horrors was to die for. Beautiful. Now, the cast was terrific and did a great job. Performances took place on Thursday, November 1st and Saturday, November 3rd. Thanks and kudos to the program. The class 2021, sophomores, hosted a glow-in-the-dark dance last Friday at the 16th in the Gymnasium from 7 to 9. Only APHS students were allowed to attend, but we still got quite lit because of the fact that students came out and joined the fun and they had a blast, showing their real school spirit. Now, tomorrow, the APHS choir will be visiting First African Baptist Church to perform at the annual Neighbor to Neighbor Thanksgiving Luncheon. In addition to singing, the APHS students will serve lunch to the members of First African. Miss Muller, my course teacher, and the school choir, me, are looking forward to visit at First African, and I am, because this is going to be so much fun. Can't wait. Now, APHS seniors will be turning our gym into a frozen wonderland for a special dance event for all little ladies in our district and a special guy in their life. Dad, uncle, grandfather, godfather. The senior class organizing the Me and My Guy dance for grades K through 5 on November 30th. The forms can be returned to your home school or mailed to APHS. If students have an older sibling at APHS, with permission, it is fine to send them the form and payment to Ms. Devaney, Mrs. Smith. There will be light refreshments. Family and friends are welcome to take pictures as the girls and their special guy enter. All the elementary schools will be receiving flyers for the event. There are enough Me and My Guy flyers for each building for all K through 5th graders. We just didn't know the exact number of girls in each class. Understandable. You can send the flyers home with the girls and keep the extras for when someone needs another one. We are so excited to see my girls and their special guy dressed up and having a fun night. Pictures from Me and My Guy will sent to all the schools so that everyone can see the fun time we had at the dance. All right.
That's it.
Just about.
Wow.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
So you're more than welcome to stay, or you can you can choose to go.
Well, I would love to stay, but I'm not seeing any pool put up on offer here, and I got some AP classes to get to. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Turn your mic over.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Butts.
So just to highlight a couple items, today and tomorrow we have parent-teacher conferences being held at the kindergarten through 8th grade schools. This evening, I believe, was the later evening. Tomorrow evening is a later evening where parents can have up until what time? Up until 7 o'clock. Parent conferences will take place. Academy Parks conferences were scheduled for last Thursday. Unfortunately, due to the weather, they had to be postponed. Has a new date been chosen? And that would be Tuesday? Wednesday? Okay, so next Wednesday, the 28th will be the parent-teacher conferences at Academy Park. Last Friday, Delaware County Intermediate Unit hosted a luncheon to celebrate American Education Week. Ms. Kathy Garrow, who's the association president, attended along with myself. The IU requested some of our artwork, so a number of our students provided artwork which was displayed at the event. And you can see some of the artwork that is around our room here. The artwork here was done by the grades 1 through 8 buildings, and it'll be on display through the end of December. Academy Park will have a display in January, February. So I want to thank all of our artists, all of our students and their teachers for the great work they've done around the room here, and also for helping out with American Education Week at the intermediate unit. And that is my report, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Butts. Now we will do the approvals. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
Motion.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the October 25th, 2018 regular board meeting?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Are there any questions on the bills?
Oh, Madam President, yes. Is it easier for me to say what page it's on, or I have all the information? It's either I got the page, I got the invoice, I got the check number. What's easiest to look up?
So let's start with the
What's
page.
The
easy?
page is easier. Let's see if
Okay.
I find it.
On page 256, it's K through 12 management.
Okay.
$62,341.90. And then right under it on the same page, K12.com. Is this the same company, or is this the same company? K through 12 management. There's 62,000 some,
Right.
and then there's something called KAYTWELVE. Is
So-
it the same company, or is that a different company?
Believe it or not, it's a different company, and I did the exact same thing. So I had raised the question about K-12, and that is actually where we purchased some furniture for buildings and also for ESC. So that's a reality with budgeted purchases for furniture. K-12 management is our online cyber course
I
provider.
figured that's what it was, right?
Yes. So very creative, K12.com in terms of the
Furniture. Okay,
Furniture.
I have to remember that. All right, thank you. One other, I hate to bring this up with it. My head is spinning thinking about the roof in the kindergarten. The Harris School, it seems like we had a problem with the boiler there, and the Delcroft School, we had a problem with the boilers. I'm calling them boilers. Now on page 255, 5-star took care of the Delcroft problem. And let me see. And then on 261, Dolan Mechanical seems to have taken care of that problem. My question is that Delcroft, the bill is like for $85,000 and some. But for Harris, it's like $263,000. What kind of work did the Dolan Company do for the Harris School to accumulate a bill for $263,430?
So the two
Yeah, the Dolan one's on page 261.
So the two boiler replacements, one at Delcroft and one at Harris, it was
Yeah.
replacing boilers that had existed there for about 25
Okay,
years.
so
The
They were-
replacement, both were bid out, and I believe you may not, Mr. Young, if you would come up and explain what Dolan did and what Five Star did.
I think what you're looking at
Yeah.
there is you're looking at the fact that Five Star split their billing up much more than Dolan did. Dolan has only sent us 2 requests for payments at this point, and that makes it look a lot bigger than it does. If you look across the scope of the entire work that Five Star did, as opposed to what Dolan has done, you'll see that there is a relative closeness. Now, there's a little more at the Harris School because we had to do a little more work. We had to put bigger boilers. No, I'm sorry, Delcroft School. Bigger boilers and Delcroft School, and there was some more demolition. The demolition was a little more intense at Delcroft. So the prices for each are going to be varied a little bit, but looking at what you're looking at there, I think what you're looking at is one payment that Dolan has submitted for. It might have been their second payment, and they
submitted 2
Right.
payments for
Right,
a
that's-
total of $263,000.
right, but that's probably payment number 2 to them. Whereas with Five Star, that may be payment number 5.
Okay, all right. And I do remember us paying Five Star before.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I thought maybe it was just something that had happened.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
thank you, Harry, I appreciate that. Okay. So we get the board amendment. Oh, Kelly Services. I was looking at those invoices, and I think some were paid at the beginning of November and some like 2 or 3, I guess maybe 3 weeks later. I guess what got me was when we have Kelly Services, I always think of teachers, although I think they also supply other help for us. So, do we have a lot of substitute teachers during the month of October?
So Kelly would be providing all of our substitute services for the day-to-day subs, plus anybody that's on an extended leave, correct, Mr. Wilson?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so it really depends on how many leave requests we have for extended leave for medical or for whatever reason, and also the day-to-day subs. So
So they could have been subs that we already had, and they're just being paid. And then new subs that we were taking on because we need a substitute teacher? Is that what you mean?
correct. So each of our buildings, we would have a number of substitutes every day that we contract with Kelly to provide us subs so that when I call out sick, somebody's in the classroom teaching. So, but we also have, if I have an extended leave, have subs that come in for that specific person for the next month or 2. Okay. All through Kelly, though.
All through Kelly. Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher.
I have a question about the bills. My question is in regards to the PICO bills. It's on page 262. I wanted to know if Academy Park is more energy efficient than the elementary schools, because I've noticed that some of the elementary schools PICO bills for electricity are a whole lot higher than Academy Park's. So the question was, is Academy Park more energy efficient than the other schools? And if so, what can we do to decrease the electricity bills in the other schools? Because they're a lot smaller, but Academy Park.
Energy efficient, but there's we're talking about 188,000 square foot building at the high school, so, you're gonna have a variance there, but, energy usage, I have to look and see where, the actual, are you talking about natural gas?
I'm talking about electricity. Academy Park's bill was $755.26 versus Harris's bill being $6,000, $298.
Say the prices again.
$755 for Academy Park.
It's not coming up.
That may be a partial bill or something.
A partial? Okay.
Should be that.
So how
Okay,
about,
because,
we look at that? So on page 262, I believe is what you were referring to.
yes,
So please look at page 262 and then provide us some information about whether it's a partial bill, whether it's the full month. Okay?
Okay.
I mean, do all the schools, are they all set to a certain temperature? The same temperature?
No, there's very,
Well, I'm sorry, that's gas.
very.
That would be gas.
Not necessarily just gas, but, electricity as far as, energy use for air conditioning, just operation of the itself.
Right.
But all of our systems and all of our buildings are under what we call BAS system, which is a building automation system. And everything is controlled so that in an unoccupied building, we can set the timing for that. And we can back down everything. What operates in the building, temperature throughout the entire building.
Sorry.
Okay.
The previous, you weren't on mic, so that discussion won't come out. So we'll follow up, just to summarize, we'll follow up in terms of looking at getting the information on what Academy Park's electricity bill compared to the other schools are. And the deeper question is, are we doing, if there's a significant difference between Academy Park and the other schools, are we doing something different with Academy Park?
Are there any additional questions on the bills? Thank you, Mrs. Forbes. Do I have a motion to approve the bills for payment in the amount of $4,489,491.15?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. There's no old or unfinished business. Now we're going to do questions on new business items. Are there any questions on education items 1 through 5? Are there any questions on finance 1 through 3? Under human resources, are there any questions 1 through 9? Are there any questions on policies 1 through 4? Oh, I'm sorry, on this one you do items 1 through 4. 1 through 10. Are there any questions on human resource items 1 through 10?
Are there any?
We're gonna do the voting. Do the vote. Are there any questions on policy 1 through 4? There are no property items. Are there any comments from the public regarding agenda items?
My judgment would be no, they're not related to agenda items.
Thank you, Dr. Butts. New business voting. Do we have a motion to approve? Do we have a motion to approve education 1 through 5?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve finance items 1 through 3?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve human resource items 1 through 9?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to approve human resource item number 10?
We have to make a
Motion.
motion, right? Yes.
Motion.
Second. All in favor? Do it. Any opposed to this number 10?
Yes.
Yes.
Nay.
Do we need to do a roll count?
If yes means nay,
Nay.
Oh,
nay.
That's something we're not used to saying nay.
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 For number 10, motion is defeated. Do I have a motion to approve policy items 1 through 4?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. There are no property items. County, community, and committee reports. Dr. Wilson, do you have a report on the Delaware County Community College?
Nothing new to report. I'll be meeting again in January with them.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Ms. Monroe, do you have a report on the Delaware County Intermediate Unit?
Not at this time. I don't know if my fellow board members want to speak on something, so I'd like to speak after Ms. Ford speaks.
Okay. Mrs. Forbes, do you have a report on the PSBA Legislative Council?
No report. I'll defer to Ms. Monroe.
Ms. Monroe?
So, hello. So the new state education profile for all schools will now be the Future Ready Index, which has already been uploaded into PD's system and is accessible to a certain degree by constituents, meaning board members, parents, so on and so forth. Parents should be getting that information on their students later in the year 2019. Principals should already have the information for their school. I've already pulled up the reports for our district, but I want to know that is the new system that the state will be scoring districts and schools and students on. It's the PA Future Ready Index. And they have webinars on PDA so that parents, board members can go in there and learn how to read the data. And I suggest that you print it in color and not in black and white. That is all.
Thank you, Ms. Monroe. Thank you, Ms. Monroe. Mrs. Irons, do you have a report on the Parent-Student Advisory Committee?
Madam President, I do, and I apologize. I'm a little under the weather. We had a meeting last Monday, the 12th, and I'll start out with my roses of the district, as I always do, for the month of November. I was able to go over to Darby Township to meet with Miss Hudson. There was a 7th grader with her named Taj Tillman, who actually, Miss Hudson and him gave me a tour of the new smart boards, and Taj actually did a demonstration of how to dissect the frog and how the kids are learning how to dissect. So he did a mini. It was a brief one. I was on my lunch hour, so I thank Miss Hudson for allowing me to come there. It was Miss Shannon Mateo Hill's class, along with Dan Steinemitz. So I do appreciate him letting me barge in on their lunch hour. And Miss Hudson, I do appreciate you for letting me come over and view. And it's amazing what these smart boards can do. Also, we mentioned before with the kindergarten. The dilemma at the kindergarten center, I found out that the cafeteria workers at Darby Township School actually cook all the food for the kindergarten center. So I just want to say, I had a chance to say thank you to those staff members, and I just wanted to name them. Miss Marie Gilchrist, Miss Roxanne Kessler, Miss Sue Roberts, Miss Jean Kilday, and Miss Carol Laverty. And I do want them to know that the board appreciates their time and energy and working hard for the kids of our district. Also on my tour of Darby Township, when I was making my way out of the building, Miss Chris Manco Morgan, her music class is out there, and they were so, they were very nice. They were introducing themselves to me and saying hi. Mr. John DeFabrizio, the health teacher, was there. He was on duty. Of course, I've known him from my kids, so I had a really fabulous lunch hour at Darby Township that day. Real quick, I also wanted to mention there were 2 teachers that sold field day shirts in May. Miss Rosie Robb and Miss Gabriella Ciala. Is that how you pronounce it? Ciala. And selling the field day shirts, it paid for the school store makeover. And it is so cute. There's an awning. So Gabby Ciela's dad installed the shiplap during the summer. Mr. Brightheart, one of our teachers, helped hang the awning and the street. There's a street sign on it. Over. It's so pretty. And Mrs. Ciela's dad also donated 2 used but in great condition smart boards in the school last May. So we do want to thank him and providing that for the students of our district. Now, moving over to this K Center. I don't see, is Ms. Burke here? No. Okay. I just wanted to let her know. I guess I'll have to call and tell her thank you. I asked her to give me all the names of the people that helped out the day of, well, just continue to help out with the lunches for the children, because I know it's kind of fiasco that day. So the cafeteria workers there, Miss Michelle Wallace is our cook. Miss Ann Leonetti, Miss Ellis Peralta, Miss Samara Cotton. Also, I want to give thanks to Mr. George Hale, who's the custodian, and then Mr. Matthew Martinez, who transports all the food back and forth. So I did want to say thank you to those members, and I have 2 more. Continuing on lines of food services, Mr. Robinson, I want to give a huge shout out to Miss Teresa Humphreys, your cook in the cafeteria. The day I stopped at Academy Park, she was able to save me something so I can run and get something for my lunch hour to take back to work. So it was at the end of the day, but she was able to scrounge up a little bit of something for me to take, and I do appreciate her. And I also wanted to say thank you to Miss Sue Heaney. I take classes on, that's Delcroft, right, Miss Wright? Okay. I take classes Wednesday night, and there's a parent I didn't realize until about 2 weeks ago, one of our parents that sits right behind me, and he is very supportive of the district. He has a set of twins, and one of his twins was in Miss Heaney's autistic support class, and he spoke very highly of Miss Heaney and how she's a great teacher. So I wanted to come share that news as well and say thank you to Miss Heaney. Now, back to the meeting. We met on the 12th. I want to say thank you to Ms. Dawn McLeod. She's from Harris. She's one of the teachers, and she comes over and she shares what Harris does, some ideas, what they do with their parent committee at Harris. And I'm very appreciative because I tell her things, and then she shares what they do. We kind of bounce ideas off of each other. Thank you, Dr. Ryan, for once coming again, Mr. Bogash. We gave out flyers of the next events. Our next meeting isn't going to be till after the new year because it's going to be every other month meeting. However, I did have one issue, and I've had several people call me, and it's in reference to I guess dismissal and parking issues at Delcroft. And Miss, I know that you also had. So, Ms. Ray, I wanted to know if you could give us. I'm sure they contacted. Can you tell me? I can't understand fully what the whole fool. Do you have any? Can you come explain? Like, do you know what the concerns are?
The street.
Can you come, please?
So just a little history as Ms. Ray comes to the mic. Delcroft Harris has significant, and Sharon Hill. All of our schools, all of our schools have limited space around them and very tight parking. That has been an issue with Delcroft over my entire career here. If you would speak about what has taken place this year in terms of your knowledge of what we're doing in terms of traffic flow and working with it, but it has been an ongoing issue, and at times we've had to have help from either our police or community police.
So, like Dr. Abbott said, and the issue is the street gets backed up in front of the building. So there's only one street that accesses Delcroft, so there isn't a back way to come into the building. And then when the students cross the street, crossing guards obviously stop the cars for the students to safely cross, and the street begins to back up. Depending on the traffic up on Delmar, there's times when and the entire school lane will get backed up the whole way down to the bottom. Relatively, it takes about 10 minutes or so for things to start to kind of clear out. We try and get our buses in and out prior to dismissal so they don't basically get stuck on the hill. Everybody talks about getting stuck on the hill. One of the things, Chief Bear with Fallcroft Police, we've talked a couple of times about different ideas that we could utilize to assist with the traffic pattern. But we've just talked, kind of did some brainstorming here and there in regards to it. So it's just a congested time with the cooler weather beginning. More parents are coming to pick their children up, so that means more cars on the street. So one of the things we try and emphasize is that students don't cross the street unless they're at a crossing guard, and that also means for any other older siblings or anyone that's picking students up, that they don't wave their children into the street to get into cars, or stop their cars and get out of the cars and block the street. We've had a couple of times where that's happened. So
my other question is, do you still, when I worked for you, I know we always had the special ed students left at least 5 or 10 minutes to go to the bus. Is that still happening?
Yes,
okay.
And one of our buses leaves prior to the bell ringing, and is at the top of the hill when the bell rings.
Okay.
So one of the two.
If I'm a special ed parent, I'm allowed to come get my child early too, or is it just for the
only
bus?
the bus.
Oh, just the
bus students.
Okay.
And they pick up on the side of the building.
Okay. So, and the police or our school police are there every day or no?
As often as possible, Fallcroft Police are present.
Okay.
If the officers are available at that time.
Okay.
I know that because we saw the same some of the same comments. I think the one was the street, but the other part is the parking lot in general. So the main issue is how do we make sure, because this has been a problem for me since I started going there to pick up people, that the parents don't double park. Because when they're double parking, they wait for their kids to come to them, or they leave their car and go get them. So aside from the street thing, which is a whole nother thing, but in the actual parking lot, so in order to go around and smoothly go around, one, it's the double parking. So especially when it was snowy that day, that was super dangerous because I was there.
Are you referring to when you come around the curb, they're double parking on that curb part?
The curb, but also they do it alongside where other cars are parked. They'll do it everywhere. They'll double park, not just the curve. And so there's that. And then I know what you do with the special needs bus, which I think is fine, except when it's there. So like when you're coming, before it gets out of the way, it's there and nobody can go around to park in the spots to go get their kids. So that's part of the reason they're double parked. So it's kind of a combination of that bus is in the way for the beginning part when people are starting to come get their kids. But the double park is a big issue because I almost hit some people when it was snowy because I was trying to squeeze around.
That's my fear.
And you don't know, are they double parked? Are they waiting to turn to go out to the street? So, that's my issue is more the double parked, although I was reading up that people were more worried because the kids are running across the street.
That's my fear.
I know that street's going to take forever to get down. I'm used to that. That's not a problem as long as people don't, shoot up in front of the cars. So I can be patient about that. But getting in the lot, being in the lot is the issue.
Do we control access to the lot?
We control access to the driveway coming in front of the building, as well as frequently parents would come in and they would back up into the driveway. So that's the main driveway. And then the one bus that comes up to the side of the building, we've looked at having it come the opposite direction. However, we were concerned with the safety of some of the students that may quickly elope from getting onto the bus due to some behavioral concerns.
So that bus is coming up beside where the exit, not the classroom exit, but the hallway exit is.
Correct.
There.
The end of the 200 wing.
Okay.
That exterior.
And access into the parking lot, we're not controlling at this point.
Access into there only in the direction into the parking lot. We don't stop parents from coming into the
Yeah,
parking
we
lot.
can get into the parking lot. We just can't get in, like I call it the bus loop, which is the front part. That they stop, so only the buses go there. But you can get in the parking lot. But the thing is to get around correctly, because you can't really. There's not enough room for cars to be going like this. So to get around, you should kind of go around like this. But when the bus is there, you're kind of stuck either double parking or hoping to go around the other way and not hit someone. There's no way to kind of make a nice circle. That's the main issue.
So one of the items we can do based off of this conversation, also just a knowledge. Harris, we have issues in terms of the dismissal and arrival. DTS, Delray Township, we have similar issues. Sharon Hill, slightly different, but still similar issues. Why don't we just take a moment and look at each of our buildings? Academy Park, we've have had to have staff available at the beginning of school and at dismissal to somewhat control some of the traffic or try to attempt to control some of the traffic going in front. At the next committee of the whole meeting, I'd like to have a conversation in executive session about some of the items raised in our safety audits, and this falls into some of the items we need to look at, because a safety audit isn't just about it's supposed to be looking at all safety issues, parking lots being one of them, access into buildings being another, how you prepare for inclement weather in terms of tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, when there's a weather emergency. So it's a host of items. The parking lots is one of the areas that we should look at, review again. But I do agree with what Mrs. Ray has indicated and several of the board members. We have some limitations given what we have in terms of traffic patterns right now, but are there things we can do to improve? That's part of what we need to consider. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ray. I appreciate you. This concludes my long report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Irons. And I also would like to say to you, Mrs. Irons, I appreciate you very much. I thank you for starting this committee, and you have brought a lot of good information back to the board as well as to the those that are in attendance for the board meeting and the audience. And
thank you.
Really greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Dr. DiOrio, do you have a solicitor? Oh, Mr. I'm giving.
I'm not sure if that
a
was
solicitor report.
I'm not sure if that was a promotion or a demotion.
Demotion.
No report tonight, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. DiOrio. Dr. Butz, is there administrative update?
Couple items carry over from committee of the whole meeting. There was a discussion about a number of concerns by parents raised about the musical and what the musical selection would be. We have held a meeting last Wednesday. Ms. Teresa Harris Johnson sat in on that meeting, including myself and Mr. Robinson. A decision was made that the musical for this upcoming year will be Seussical, the musical, and not what was announced previously. That will be communicated over the next couple of days. As I indicated to the board earlier, that was one of the decisions made. A couple items that we will have to follow up on in a follow-up meeting likely taking place next week. The follow-up meeting, we'll have to discuss continued discussion about staffing, continued discussion about licensing. The director and I had a conversation about receiving appropriate licenses for the new musical, to reach out to the company about that. And they also hold the license for the play production. There was communication with the company that holds the license for both. The discussions have to be reduced to writing so that no matter what they say, I can review it and see it. It's not a matter of saying one thing. I need something in writing. And also then, if indeed copyrights are required, which generally they are, for musicals and for productions that the required licenses are purchased. So we are in conversations with that so that everything is reduced to writing. So if permission was provided previously, I need to see it in writing. The follow-up, as I indicated, also will include working together with all the individuals involved and the people involved with musical productions. Also the use of volunteers and how clearances are, what clearances, if any, are expected, because we do have a board policy that requires clearances for certain levels of volunteers. We do not generally require clearances for individuals that come into classrooms and read to students, individuals that do a very short time event with our students, parents, community members. So there are different clearances, requirements based on what a person does. So that's another piece of the conversation that will be followed up on. I do expect that meeting to take place early next week, and I would anticipate over the next several weeks or months there will be need for additional meetings. So that is my update.
Thank you, Dr. Butts. And I see that we have some comments from citizens regarding non-agenda items. Ms. Marla Robinson. Ms. Robinson, would you state your name and address? And you have 3 minutes.
Marla Robinson, 15 North Garfield Avenue, Glen Olden, Darby Township.
Check the microphone.
It sounds on to me. Okay.
Very good. Perfect.
All right. I'm going to leave the musical to my musical people. Ditto what everything they say. My issue is my husband uses the gym at Academy Park on Saturdays. This is his 3rd year doing it. First problem, he was never told he had to pay for it. We received about 3 weeks ago, 2 bills. Both for $300. The first bill, which sitting here I just noticed, the date was 12/19/2017.
12/19?
Yes, of last year. The due date was 12/20/2017. The usage date or the event date 6/9/2018. That's not possible. Anyway, that was a year ago. Why are we just receiving a bill that was due 1 day after it was supposedly sent or supposedly to be billed to us a year later? Second bill dated in February of this year. Same thing, February 2018, the 14th. The due date is February 15th. Same thing. And by the way, these 2 bills, he changed the time for this year to 9 to 12. Both of these bills say 9 to 12. The 2 previous years that he's used it was 8 to 11. So I'm confused as to why all these discrepancies are on these bills. The person in charge, quite frankly, makes way too much money to not send out bills on time. That person's paycheck is paid by the taxpayers of this district. It's an extremely well-paid paycheck. Why are we paying $600 for something that he messed up? One more thing. My husband already paid the $600. He's better than me because I wouldn't have paid it.
So, Dr. Scott, with the bills that have gone out, came through business office? Not exactly?
No.
Okay.
Sharilla in accounts payable prepares them working in conjunction with facilities, with grounds maintenance.
So my understanding is that the 2 years of bills were sent out at the same time?
No, they were not sent out. Both bills came in one envelope to us 3 weeks ago, but they have 2 separate dates on it. So they're
2 years of bills sent
this year, 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Did you receive a bill for this year yet?
Nope. I'm anticipating that in 2 years.
So the activity for this year is just beginning?
It's been going on since September. They start in September, I believe. Actually, they started later this year. But normally it's from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year.
And that's for use of the auxiliary gym, I believe?
Yes.
Okay, for the Sunday or Saturday?
Saturday mornings.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. So the concern that you're raising is around receiving both sets of bills with no notice.
Right. Clear to me, it seems like somebody got caught not doing their job and they decided, I'm going to just throw these bills together and mail them to these people so that they can just go ahead and pay them to cover our butts. That's what it looks like to me. And like I said, people in this district get paid way too much money to not send out a bill on time.
Okay. So I hear the concern, and Dr. Scott, can you look into where we're at with that?
Well, we're out
Can we
$600.
have
That's how where we're at with it.
Can we have an actual response go back to Mr. Robinson? And I believe at the committee of the whole, there was also a concern raised by another individual. I will get you that. So we do need a response going back.
So
Okay.
question, can we get reimbursed that $600 that somebody did not bill us for it? And if the electric company doesn't bill us for a year, I'm not giving them money for a year. That's their loss. That $600 should be the district's loss, or it should come out of that person's paycheck.
So at this point, the two options, at this point, what Dr. Scott needs to look at is what we've done up to this point. On the contracts that are signed up online, there's a clear indication of what the cost is per season. The
Okay, that
indication-
still doesn't take care of the problem that we were not billed for 2 years. That's not our problem.
I understand
It's
that,
the district.
yes.
No, that's not even the district's problem. That's the person's problem who didn't do their job.
So
And we all know who that person is.
I understand the concern you're raising. Okay?
Question, just for
Mhm.
clarity. So if two, because I wasn't here, I'm sorry, I'm fanning, it's very hot in here. How many other people have received bills from 2 years ago? That is my question at this point. And secondly, why doesn't our system automatically generate a bill?
That's not the way the system is set up.
So
I
we
can-
don't have that capability.
I didn't say that. I'm not positive if we have that capability or not. I know
Oh,
at this point, that's not the way the system was set up.
Okay, so is it possible that when individuals or organizations sign or click that part, that a bill be generated moving forward? If possible.
Ideally, that would make sense. So you sign up, ideally, there's a set of fees, and a invoice or a bill is generated at that point, so that it takes you know exactly what you're signing up for.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
And let me also let everybody know, the guys don't have a problem paying, they're, chipping in and paying yearly or whatever. But to wait 2 years to send a bill, again, I'm going to state,
understand the concern.
someone's not doing their job. In the real world, you get fired for stuff like that.
I understand what
I
you're
don't
saying
understand why in this
terms
district
of-
people don't get fired for not doing their job. That seems to be a practice. I'm just saying. Now,
I've heard
back to
the
my other
concern.
question. Can we get reimbursed that $600? Look into it. Okay, when we going to find that out?
Dr. Scott will get back to you on that in terms of finding, we have to look into the situation. Dr. Scott will have to follow up.
How long will that take? Because a couple weeks ago, Dr. Scott,
I would hope
somebody
next
was supposed
week.
to get back to somebody else the next day and it didn't happen. So I'm just wondering how long it's going to take for
So I
somebody
would
to
hope
get back
by
to me about that.
next week a communication can take place.
Okay,
Okay?
all right. And
Okay.
if not, I'll be back next month talking about the same person.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Mr. Jordan McGowan. Would you state your name and your full address, please? And you also have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jordan McGowan. I live at 421 Clifton Ave, Sharon Hill.
Lift the mic up to you. Face a little bit, baby. Thank you.
My concerns are regarding the Southeast Delco District Musical. My first concern is in regards to my parents' protests of the original choice of the District Musical and how the repercussions could affect my choice my decision of getting a casting. So I would like to know if I'm guaranteed an equal spot in getting a cast or a lead role in the musical, even though my parents were protested against the original choice of the musical due to the director's choice. My second concern is in the contract it states that we're only allowed to have 2 predetermined absences from the practices, which is supposed to be submitted by mid-December. I'm a very active member in this community, including in the gifted program, sports, high Q, and robotics. How am I expected to decide which predetermined activities I have when most of my schedule is undetermined and yet to be determined? How am I expected to accept any after-school activities with the threat of missing too many practices and losing my chance to participate in the musical? I've also been a member of the district musical for 5 years.
Question, there's a contract to be in a musical?
Yes, I have the contract here if you would
Can I
like to
see it, please?
You weren't here.
Oh, can I see that, please?
So there's,
Yeah.
So the
there's,
students have to sign a contract?
Yeah. He wrote it
it's
up.
providing the
I believe so.
expectation.
He made his version of it.
states where the
But these are the details.
Can I borrow, I just want to look at it, excuse me.
Yeah, we got it.
So I guess my next question would be, have they used contracts in the past? I mean,
Yeah, but they can tweak them.
oh, but they can tweak them, okay, okay.
So there has been contracts that was raised, that did not come up in the last meeting, so I do apologize on that. That was not, unless I missed something, that was not something, it came up in the last committee meeting. Did not come up with the meeting that Ms. Teresa Harris Johnson and I had. So we have to go back to that.
Yes, and I believe the contract issue with the 2 prior dates were raised before, but this is coming from a student's perspective of,
Right.
I have after-school practices and activities that I need to worry about in competitions for robotics that sometimes may overlap with the musical practices, and I'm not confident in my ability to participate fully in both the musical and my after-school activities without the threat of losing a lead role and/or my participation in the musical.
Okay. Jordan, I understand the concern. I don't have an answer on that. That's an item that was not raised in the last meeting, so I will raise it. In the last meeting that I had with Mr. Oriente, and so I will raise that, look at what the options are, because you are quite active. You're correct. So that's one thing. I believe you also raised a question. What was your second item? Sorry,
I think you mean my first item with me questioning whether or not
Right.
I'll receive repercussions for my parents protesting against the original choice in the musical. I would just like confirmation that I will be given an equal chance at a lead role, just like everyone else, even though my parents protested against the original choice of the musical.
That would be my expectation, that you would receive equal opportunity that everybody else would have. And that was one of the items that we talked about, not specifically that, but in terms of everybody having access to the musical and to the various roles in the musical. This musical does have a significant number of different lead parts and a slightly larger cast compared to what the other musical was. So that was a conversation we had. My expectation is that everybody's given a fair chance based on what their abilities are and the casting, the other people that are involved. Okay?
Okay.
You can definitely have a conversation with me between now and the time that the musical is casted, which I believe is to be early January.
Correct.
So if you see me sometime in the hallway, you can definitely follow up. And you're more than welcome in December. Come back for the board meeting. I believe there's also a planned night or planned rehearsal time to go over parts leading up to the auditions in January, so there'll be some time for that.
Yes, there will be a workshop for the people who are auditioning for the leads. Yes,
Right.
correct.
So, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, honey.
Is the contract something that we should be voting on? Because I don't think that this contract is very fair to the student.
No, it's not an item for the board to vote on. I do hear the concern that has been expressed. It is a contract that, in my judgment, the high school administration should sanction. And so that's an item that we will be looking at. Just like any activity, coach does have some latitude in terms of participation. The latitude at the most recent football game that took place, there was some consequence due to non-participation in required events that week. And the coach did coaching. It did have some impact on who participated. I would imagine the same thing in terms of musical. We do want, here's the expectation, but there does need to be the appropriate flexibility given the fact that Jordan's schedule is quite robust. And he is, he's not the only one, correct. The reality is there does need to be a certain commitment, but there also needs to be recognition that students need to have a well-rounded activity and not just one item. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Patrick McGowan, could you also state your full name and address, and you have 3 minutes?
Thank you, Mr. President. Patrick McGowan, 421 Clifton Avenue, Sharon Hill. Just want to say, first of all, thank you for listening to Jordan. I'm trying to teach my children when they see an issue to raise, be a participant in the community. So I know he's very nervous public speaking, so Jordan did awesome.
Did a very good job.
Just to follow up to my comments and my concerns from the committee of the whole meeting, I asked the board and the business manager to look into if the rights were ever actually secured and paid for. Little Shop of Horrors that was produced at the high school. Were we able to get an actual answer if the director secured the rights?
Yes, as I indicated earlier, there was conversation that I had with the director around the needing to have license for the district musical and the fall play. Fall play, he provided justification on what was explained around why license may not have been needed. The problem was I did not see anything in writing, so he was directed to get something in writing. Or if it was not received, if it was received in writing that the license was needed, we needed to continue our contact with the agency that owns the copyright to get that resolved. There was definitely willingness on his part, and I believe the agency, to work that out.
Okay, so that answers for the spring musical, the fall.
That's the fall play.
Oh, for the fall play.
The two were combined. Spring musical, we have to have the license. We had to check to see if Seussical was available, and that was checked because if another production in the area bought up the rights,
exactly,
the exclusive rights, we could not have gotten it. That did not take place. There is another musical, another local high school that's putting it on, but they do not have exclusive rights, and so we do have a draft copy of an agreement for that.
So
for the fall play, for the fall play, my expectation was the same. He had indicated these are the reasons why it was not a production that needed license.
So then I have a follow-up quiz. Quite frankly, when Mr. Oriente in the September meeting came up and boasted his 30-something years or 20-something years of experience as a theater director at his Jewish academy that he's there, you would think one would know to actually get everything in writing and submit to the board or to the business office for payment. I've done accounts payable, I did contracts. So my question, that being said, so as of right now, no payment was actually ever submitted to the production company that we as community members, I mean, it's $5. I don't care about the $5, but I do care. Where did my money go to then? If it wasn't paid for the rights and the set was already pre-built from last year's musicals, the costumes were just from the stuff that we had in the costume closet. Where did that money go? Did the money ever get turned in and be accounted for? These are very valid questions that I have.
I'm sorry, excuse me. What money are you speaking of?
So it costs $5 to get into the production of Little Shop of Horrors, but where does that money go to? I could see if it was going to pay for the rights of Little Shop of Horrors, or if it was being offset to the set of Little Shop of Horrors. Where did this money go to? Was the money ever turned into the business office saying this is how much money we made from this production?
So that was the fall play. So the fall play, as I indicated about the license, the justification that was provided was these are the reasons why license may not have been needed. And conversation did take place to verbally get that confirmation. Verbal doesn't work. That's what I indicated. I needed something in writing. Either you're paying for the license or you're getting in writing from the person that, or the organization that owns the license, the okay that you could use it in the way it was used. And the way it was used was not the full production. It was a couple scenes out of the full production. It was a walk-through format in terms of using the scripts, hand scripts, and not the memorization of full production that way. That was some of the justification that was given. It needs to be done in writing, though, and that's what I indicated, and so that's the follow-up that he has to do.
Just so you know, by the way, it was the full production dialogues. The only thing they didn't do was they did not do the memorization of scripts, but the actual dialogue and song selection was the full Little Shop of Horrors.
I'm not aware of that. That's not what was indicated.
Well, that's the problem with things not being written down and appropriately, and I'm sorry, 20-something years as a theater person, and this is what he gives us, and it's unacceptable. I am sorry. I'm not even a theater major, and I know you're supposed to have stuff in writing, because my concern as a parent is how are we going to trust another program to him and just say, oh, this is what they said. I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. And you as board members, and I'm sorry, as the administration, if that is what you're buying, then I have land for you, in Alaska somewhere.
So as I said, the follow-up would be, I expected something in writing. So that's
So when are we expected to get that follow-up so we are, safeguarded for our spring musical?
So we have in writing for the spring musical. We're fine with that. The piece for the fall play, I had indicated I wanted by the time we're meeting again, which is next week. So we'll see where it stands at that time.
Well, then I'll be back next month for an update then.
So
I actually will probably reach out to you before that.
I hate to be a pain, but this is a program that is very near and dear to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to let it get dismantled. And our name is our reputation here.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question since he brought up payment for the spring play, or is it fall play?
Fall play, spring musical.
So spring musical, who turns the money in for spring musical then? If we're questioning the fall play, who turns that money in? Is it turned into the business office?
Honestly, it could have come in. It doesn't come directly to me. It goes to accounts receivable. She makes the deposit slips and sends it to the bank. With us being down the accountant, it could still be over there. I need to check it. I have no idea.
Okay.
I have a question. Did the fall play make money? Does it get charged money?
Yes, they get charged. Well, this year's admission was $5 per admission.
Per admission?
Yep.
Okay. So this question is, where did that money go?
Exactly. If there's no right,
If there's no rights.
we didn't purchase the rights for it, and we didn't purchase set materials or costuming, where did that $5 go? I mean, I know it may seem silly. $5 is just $5, but it's more of the principle of the fact. There has to be accountability and transparency here.
So we'll check in to the money. The piece, if licenses have to be purchased, the amount for a license probably is to be anywhere from $1,100 to $2,600.
Correct.
And the amount of money collected probably is under 100, maybe 150. not saying that that isn't money. It definitely is. $150, it will have to go toward license if that is the case. It should also be, we'll find out if it was provided here. Generally, emissions for events go to offset some of the cost. The cost already incurred is the cost of the staff for supplementals, same way as coaches for sporting events. Some of our sporting events do not charge emissions, so the district's taking the heat, taking the, covering the cost for teams like soccer and field hockey and some of our events that do not charge admission. The same way with the fall play and the spring musical. The last number of years we have covered a portion of both costs over the last 6-7 years, because the district musical has had higher production costs for some, like Peter Pan, where Trep's flying took place, and that definitely impacts the overall ability to raise the money.
Correct, but at the same time, everything that we've done for the spring musical has been well documented in writing, and our expenditures and the money that we bring in is all documented. Can we really say the same thing about the fall play for the last couple of years, up until including this year? I know the answer to that's no.
So I will talk to Dr. Scott. I take you at face value. I have lived the musical 10 years.
I know.
I'm well aware of how the finances have worked over those times. And it's a process that has evolved over that time.
I know, and I appreciate the board's time. Like I know, I said this last month. I know it may seem trivial to some, but to a lot of our parents who are in the musical, we live, breathe, and die by this program.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Forbes, you have something that you would like to say? So do I.
So since we were just talking about contracts, just made me think about, well, just didn't start thinking about it, but I have a big stack right here of contracts, and I've been bringing up the discussion about our contracts and our bids and what the process is, and if we could have prior notification than a week before, than the committee of the whole when a bid is to come up. With that being said, I asked our business manager how much of our contracts go to minority businesses. And that's not known because we don't have policy on that. And I would like to know if our solicitor can help our board with drafting such a policy where we can deem a certain percentage of our contracts go to minority companies.
As a preference. Yeah, I'll be happy to look into that, sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for giving me the floor. Yes.
I also have some questions.
Okay.
For the solicitor. One is, are you consulted on the issues that affect Southeast Delco?
On certain issues, yes.
Are you consulted on issues that affect Southeast Delco?
Well, I mean, it depends on the issue, but on some issues I am, on some I'm not. I respond when I'm asked to, given a task or asked a question by either board member or administration, yeah.
Okay. I don't even know if I could ask this question in a second. So I'll ask this one offline. The question I would like to ask, I don't think it's appropriate for this time. Secondly, as a committee person on a committee, if I ask the appointee, if the superintendent, like I'm on HR and I'm on policy, do I need to go through the superintendent to ask the question of the employee that he appoints? Or am I asking the question to the employee he appoints and CCing the superintendent on it?
Generally speaking, in school districts administration, the administration has been hired, of course, by the board to operate the district. The district is there for policy and oversight, generally speaking. So usually the question of a board member will go through the administration, generally through the superintendent, or through HR, or through the business manager, depending upon the nature of the question. Now, if for some reason that question is not answered, that question is not handled, then the board member may want to interact directly. But the normal procedure that I believe PSBA would approve and recommend would be to go through the administration, because they're the folks that have been hired to operate the district on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. So then, the question I guess I have, I guess it would be for Stephen. So, moving forward, how would you like me to ask questions? Would you like me to ask them through you? Then you send it to the committee person, and then I get a response back? Or would you like me to send it to the appointee of the committee and CC you on it?
So for each of the committee, there's a administrator, one of the top administrators in the district that has the expertise. And generally, when a discussion item comes up at a committee or in respect to the work of the committee, my recommendation, what I'd like to see, is that you contact that person, preferably by email, CC myself on that. The reality is you have to give me a heads up of what is the discussion, and you need to provide enough details so that the administration can follow up with the response. The difficulty that administrators have is trying to read minds. If we can't sort through what the email were to follow up, we should follow up and indicate, hey, we don't understand this area. So be as detailed as possible, and sometimes it's very appropriate just to pick up the phone and raise the concern, what the question is, and then to reduce it to writing, the staff person or myself should be able to say, hey, this is what we talked about. Is this what you want? So that there can be clarification sorting through that. But the committee work, there is a committee administrator assigned, and actually there's two. There's the, in just about every case, if not every case, there's an administrator who's taking the lead role in setting the agenda and setting, here's what we're covering, and another administrator also part of that committee. I tend to sit in on most of the committees. Give me a heads up of this is what we're wanting to talk about, this is what we want to consider. There are 499 school districts throughout the Commonwealth. And in most areas, there's similarities of how we function, but there's not a one-size-fit-all or a best way to accomplish a task. So when you have an item that you want looked into, we can definitely get the information. We can definitely have a discussion. Here's what we've been doing. What are your thoughts? And that should be part of the committee process. Okay?
Thank you. One more question to the solicitor. Is it illegal for the board to know about any resignation letters and or exit interviews minus the former employee's name being on it? Like, is there a law that says, hey, the board can't know why you're resigning?
Well, there's a board policy. Well, generally speaking, as the board is aware, we've discussed this before. There are circumstances when an employee leaves the district very good circumstances, resignation, they find a better job, family circumstances, that happens all the time. We wish them well. Sometimes someone leaves under circumstances that might require the board to have a hearing about that person's leaving the district. And in those situations, then the board would not be privy to that information because, as we've discussed before, that person potentially could come before the board for a hearing, and the board has to remain objective because if there is going to be a hearing before the board about an employment matter, a personnel matter, the board has to make a decision based upon the evidence at that hearing. Now, there is a board policy that does require, that does indicate that the board the board under normal circumstances, meaning when there's not a potential for someone to come before the board for a hearing, we have a board policy that indicates that a board member may have access to personnel file, just like members of the administration would have access, as long as it's for an educational purpose, as long as it is within their purview of their function as a board member. Obviously, if they just wanted to find out some information about someone that had nothing to do with you being a board member, that wouldn't be permitted.
Right.
So as long as the board would sanction that, if a board member felt there was a particular reason where access to personnel record was necessary or requested, that would be taken to the board through the president of the board as usual. And if the board indicated, okay, we understand you want to see that record, we think it's appropriate, we think it's for the right reason, an educational purpose within your job as a board member, then that board member would be allowed to see the personnel record. And we do have a policy to that effect.
Yes. So if the board would like to see reasons why, to see the trends of why people. So if people are saying, oh, I'm leaving because I feel like these things should be changed, or this is how I felt. If it's just general, you want to see what the scope of why the people are leaving, not being in litigation, not coming before the board, is that illegal?
If you mean that to look
So
at
for education,
let's say to look at every personnel record of every person that has left the district during a certain period of time, to do a whole survey, I'd have to look into that. I don't believe that's the purpose of the policy. I believe the policy seems to be geared more to a case-by-case basis.
Right.
But the policy isn't clear in that respect, so we'd have to have, I think, more of a discussion about it in the future. I understand what you're asking. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm not saying you can do it. I'm saying that the board policy doesn't deal with that particular type of request. It's more or less a general policy that says if there's a reason that a board member, due to the board member's role and function, wants to see a personnel record, with the majority of the board's consent, with the consent of the majority of the board, meaning 5 board members, they can do that. As far as some sort of blanket survey, we'd have to talk about that further.
Okay. Oh, I do have a concern. So, yes, so I had asked for previously during the budget review, I believe it was like a couple months ago, and I had asked for a detailed budget to know exactly every line item of the district so that we can have a clear understanding of really why the district was in the state that it was in. I received some information. I also asked about overtime, because overtime affects the overall budget of the district. And some of the stuff I'm seeing on here, I'm questioning, like school police overtime. I don't understand how we have overtime when we still have kids propping doors at Academy Park. So when does the police officer work? Is this during the day? And if it's during the day, why is he getting paid overtime?
So schools could
security in general?
No, it says police officer overtime, $7,394.14
So is that
to date.
a line item just for police officer? It's all security, and the reality would be significant amount of it would be after school activity in terms of football games and events after the regular school day.
So then who secures the building when it's being propped open all night long while we're having events or when they're having practices and stuff?
So we have a individual that is on the 2 o'clock to 10 to 11 shift, and that individual is tasked with going around the various buildings, make sure that the buildings are locked up appropriate.
Well, you're talking you're talking about during
I don't know
events.
because this is my first time ever seeing this.
Because
budget.
anything that would happen during events,
you would have security.
Well, no, it also, like let's say it was a basketball game, the basketball coaches and all would be responsible that what they were doing practice-wise, that
they're not propping doors.
Doors weren't propped. Right. That falls on them. We couldn't. There's no way we could have an officer at every building all the time. Overnight propping, somebody props a door and they forget, and then our nighttime security goes around and does the sweep. And I know Bill Whitman right now, I believe, is our nighttime guy, and I'm sure he's looking for that. But it's still, if this is happening, we have to make sure that we're coming down on our coaches and the people in them buildings.
Absolutely.
That this is not happening. And if it continues to happen, then we tell them that they're not welcome back.
But if
I
you're
mean,
getting overtime, you're still not doing the job.
Right. Well, like he said, the overtime though is
overtime's for the
whole bunch
events.
of stuff. Right.
So it's
not
it's for the mainly football events, the sporting events after school hours, and that's the security helping us out with those events, Power Puff game, items like that. Okay. So each of our buildings at night have an alarm set.
Right.
And so access to the buildings after hours, anybody access, the alarm goes off. So that's just the reality with the buildings setting the alarms.
Okay, so in our next budget, can we have a detailed budget with all the expenditures in it? Because
so what you have in front of you is the detailed budget. That's line by line. I believe there is what was provided during last budget, and Dr. Scott, if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Was it in the budget?
This is brand new. Absolutely provided every line that we have in our budget to the board, went through it, a 3-hour, 4-hour meeting. Half the board was raising concerns. It was a long meeting. We can go back to the budget books. It had the spreadsheet in it, here's what we're putting here's teacher salaries at DTS, here's the teacher salaries at Delcroft.
Overtime amount was in it as well? Because this is overtime. This is just overtime. This is all this is.
I believe
Go ahead.
during budget season, we gave budget. What you have is actual to date. You requested, you made a request to know how much
so the request
overtime was
was
paid to date.
Right, so the request wasn't time to date. No, it was not. It was, the request was the first request was because there are an employee that's going around the district telling people how he received a letter from HR about ceasing overtime, and he was instructed by his supervisor to not listen to HR, and they will handle HR for him. That was the first request. Did you ever give a letter to any employee to cease overtime? That was never answered. So I'm going to go to the email. And
So Mr. Wilson.
So then it was stated that they were not aware of it. They were going to get back to me, and instead of them getting back to me on that item, this item was given to me. So this was a surprise for me to even get. I didn't request the overtime. So then I got handed over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 policies that I already have in a 4-ring binder that I already had, and I had indicated in there if there's in the binder, if it's a policy, yes, I already have it. So then I asked for, do we have a handbook in the district? Don't have a handbook. We only go by what's in the policies. Then since more questions were asked, I was like, oh, well, now they're opening up my eyes even more. Let me start asking for more things, just for clarification at this point. So at that point, I'm like, oh, okay, so we don't have a handbook. We give a binder to somebody when they first start. Somebody works here for 23 years. That binder's in the trash. Let's be realistic. They don't remember nothing that was in that binder, and all they're doing is going through policy. So in my mind, I'm thinking we should actually adopt a handbook, because then no one could say to us, hey, I don't remember that. I don't remember getting that binder. So me asking questions, I'm asking general questions. People are assuming I want individual files, and I'm just asking general questions. I do it on purpose, just generally asking questions out of the blue. I even asked Dr. Butts a general question. He gave me the information. It's in my binder. I just ask general questions. People just assume because I live in the district, I know people, and that's why I'm asking these questions. It has nothing to do with other people. I just ask general questions on purpose. So my question is, and this might have been in the budget, but I don't remember it. To see it laid out like this, to see how much is already budgeted, to see that some line items are not even budgeted out, but we've already paid it out, but we don't have no money. So now I'm confused at this point. You're budgeting, you have an item that has no money in it, but you're paying out on it? Where are we getting the money from? So now this just opened up a whole nother can of worms.
So the line items with the overtime, my understanding is transportation.
But that would go without saying, because you can't dictate traffic.
My understanding is school security and building and grounds. And those are the areas with overtime, correct?
No, not by this paperwork I got. The paperwork I have right now, the technician salary OT, budget 0, year-to-date expenses $4,395.66. I don't even know what technician salary is, and why are they getting overtime?
So, Mr.
Wilson, again, I didn't ask for this. I just asked a simple question. Did you send a letter to an individual? Now he's going around the whole district telling people this.
So, Mr. Wilson.
And that was the question. So, thank you for this information. I'm just going to keep it and let it go.
What was provided in terms of the follow-up, your analysis of what was requested?
Okay. There was a lot there. So on the specific follow-up to, there was a lot there captured. As a follow-up to what's there as far as the overtime, the overtime information that was asked, specifically the question that's captured in the email was request to know overtime and why was the question. And why? Is there overtime? How much overtime and why? The only way to answer that question that was specifically required in the email, are we offering overtime, how much and why, is to first, by department, working with Ms. Scott in the business office to go ahead and get by code the various departments and their overtime. And it does show line item by every department that would have people that would get overtime, what the budgeted amount was. That's the budgeted amount by line item. And then 2, it also shows income, what was spent year to date. So by looking at it, there's the budget amount. Here's what it says there. It says on the line. And then in that same category, whether it is not it's grounds, whether or not it's transportation, whether or not it's security, any area that could possibly have overtime. It shows this is what was budgeted, this is how much year to date. So I would agree that there's probably more information than was asked. However, it's not missing what was asked, from my perspective, that is. Also, the information that was given out was responded to. We were asked if there was, I forget Ms. Monroe's last question that you asked for something and you didn't get that information. I just need specifics, as I believe that all that information was provided. So I would just need, what was this, the last one you said you asked for that you didn't get?
Well, I had asked if the HR department gives a directive to an employee
Yes.
and a supervisor tells
Thank
the
you.
employee to disregard what the HR says,
yes,
who's disciplined?
I thank you very much. This is a great question.
Right.
So
Who's
in my
disciplined?
responses to you, I'm a little confused because in my response when you first asked that question, I asked, could you give me more information? Because like Dr. Butts indicated earlier, it was really hard for me to put my finger on what are we talking about here? So upon further review, it all boiled down to me in their final analysis is that what employees may talk about from one employee to the next, from what one may rumor to one, or as you said, talking to another one, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. As administrators in the district, we can't really get caught up in the rumor mill. We got to deal with facts. The bottom line for the whole thing was, did someone disregard something that HR said? I responded back to you and told you no such letter was ever sent from Human Resources. So for me, anything else that could potentially have come from that, like someone going around lying or whatever, all of it is dismissed, right? Because a person can't possibly be true, disrespecting or disregarding a directive that I never sent. So that's why when I responded to you immediately, mind you, no such response ever came. Because I'm really, anyone who knows me at this point, and I've certainly, hopefully everyone has got a chance to know me. I'm really not one for, not doing my job. And if something is in the scope of what I need to do, and I put it out there, and then I feel as though the district's interest is not being taken serious because they did not respond to these things. And mind you, these things are not Brian Wilson's things. These things are policy, right? These things are what we need to do for the good functioning of the district, right? So if someone didn't do something that they were supposed to do, if someone didn't cease doing some behavior that was in violation of policy, I have to follow up on that stuff. I'm one of the positions that absolutely cannot pretend that they didn't hear something once they hear it. It's just a part of HR. Once you hear it, I can't act like I didn't. So for me, that's why the rest of it, I paid no attention to as far as the rumor mill, because I never sent a letter to anyone saying something to them that they should immediately stop. So that's just employee chatter.
I have a question. On your list.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, can you hold on? Because you might need to. On your list, can you look on that list? I've heard every department pretty much, or category, stated, but I haven't heard anything about overtime for secretaries.
There's no secretary overtime
Do we have
on here.
overtime for secretaries? Do they get paid overtime or do they get paid comp time?
A combination, right? So, perfect example, registration, right? We have folks who, during the kindergarten registration, the big push, it can get really flooded around here, and that's a minimal staff department. So we have folks who would stay into the evening just to get those parents, to get those babies registered, so that's only for a certain time of year. So what would happen is sometimes, either through comp time to support a person who's doing extra, and other times, depending on what the situation is, how much. A small thing is easy, 2 hours, an hour. But sometimes you're leaning on an employee enough that, you know what, you need to put money behind that, right? So as a result of that would be additional hours. So I believe this year, for that evening stuff, our registration person received somewhere less than 20 hours to stay deep into the evenings to go ahead and take care of that. So you can see examples like that as well. For example, also in the business office or the HR office, or additional hours when periodically a school principal might call up and say, hey, we got this evening thing, it's beyond the so-and-so. It's not a blanket thing so that anyone could go ahead and do hours, Ms.
Okay.
Irons, but from on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, what about at the school? Say you're there, parents come in. Even, I'm not sure if how the clocks are now, but when I was here, you could not clock in before 7 minutes, or when it's time for you to clock out. So say if I'm still staying there at the school, past my time, past that 7 minutes, that clock locks for the
It does.
secretaries.
And it takes an
So-
administrator to undo it.
Right. So what I'm saying is, how do you determine if I'm working late, and this is not nothing I hear say, this is from what I experienced, if I'm working late, and how do you determine that if you lock the clock on the employee? If I'm security, I can just swipe out. But if I'm not allowed to go into that time clock and say, okay, I worked the extra half hour, and believe me, it's so busy. I'm sure you can appreciate that. How are you determining? And also, from, I don't know, I'm only going by what I do know, facts, as you said, because I lived it. The comp time, you can't take it into the summertime. So, what if I worked all this comp time and then I just turn around and I say, well, I'm leaving the district? I got another job. So you got all this comp time that you gave to this district that contractually, we're supposed to be paid for it. The secretaries was, I heard every other position on there except for our administrative assistants, and they work their behinds off in every building. Facts, something I lived.
Absolutely.
So I want to know why. Why don't they? Why?
So to answer that question, you're right. The machine does lock it down in the way it's supposed to
But
work.
I don't understand why. Why is it locked down if I'm working? Okay, let me give you a chance to explain. I'm just saying, if you work overtime, it's supposed to be why lock it?
So I think we do go ahead and honor that. The reason why it's locked is if the system, and this is a common thing in employer-employee or organizations, right? The clock cannot remain wide open at all times. You would never be able to manage it for any organization, regardless what industry you're talking about.
But how come other departments do?
No. So what happens is, once the thing locks it out the way it should work, Ms. Irons, is once the time clock locks it out, that doesn't mean the person can't get the hours that they've done. There should be a supervisor at some level, right, who knows that, hey, this person is doing these extra things and I really need it. So as a result, that's why we have supervisors, right? The locking it out isn't the issue. The issue is being heady, right? Being heads up to say, this person, like you said.
That your perception is not the issue. I believe, I feel it's the issue.
Well, I think you might have misheard me. I did not say there was something about perception. I think you might.
No, I'm saying that's your perception that it's not the issue. But being in the trenches and being a former employee, I do feel their pain. I feel the administrative assistant's pain. Anybody's pain. I think it should be fair for everybody. If you're going to give somebody overtime, if they worked, give them their money, give them their just due.
I agree, Ms. Irons, and if there's anything more that we can do to further that beyond what I think we're already doing, let's go ahead and do that. I think we're on the same page with that.
Okay.
So,
No, thank you.
Mr. Wilson and Dr. Scott, I believe both of you have participated in previous training about time accounting of employees and what individuals are acceptable for overtime, and that we have to keep track of their time and hours, whatever. That's a requirement by federal, state regulations that we have to be able to show this person worked from this time to this time, and if there's extra time being required by the employer, not by the employee, but the employer requesting, you're staying, so that's what we're doing with security. You're staying to help with the football game, therefore we are having to pay you. If the same thing's happening with a PCA, a personal care assistant, a student is having an issue, and we need that person to stay despite their hours ending at 1:30. That's not reality, but let's say it ends at 1:30, and for this given day, they need to be there to help administration handle a student situation. We have to keep track of that. And I know that a number of the people in the room here have to do time cards.
But Dr. Butts, what about that person, like where I was, or even in any of the building? You're going to turn a parent away, so, 4 o'clock, clink, come back another day. You're not going to, first of all, we'll be fired for that. So plenty of times there are parents that come in at the very end of the day at certain
There
times.
are absolutely times when that happens.
So if I can't take my time into the summertime and say, I don't understand that. I don't understand it. Is that a policy? Is that a policy? Bob, do you know if that's the comp time? Do we have a policy, Bob, for comp time?
I don't know that offhand. I'll certainly look into it.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, is there a policy for comp time?
There's loose language about.
No, is there a policy?
There is not a robust policy for comp time.
Thank you.
So there definitely is regulations around having to compensate hourly employees.
They should be paid
for extra time outside of their regular work schedule. So they're hourly employees. So salary and what Mr. DiOrio is saying is there's a difference between hourly and salary.
I understand.
And part of that goes to overall compensation also. But
I understand that. I'm talking about the secretaries on the front line that are hourly, that are putting in all this time, working their behinds off, doing 2 and 3 jobs in all the buildings, because I hear it from all of them, and I've lived it. All I'm saying is fair is fair. If we got money to pay for these people for thousands of dollars, why can't you pay the secretaries? That's all I'm asking. Just let's be fair. Let's call space. Let's be fair across
Mr. Wilson,
the board. Because they do have a contract.
Mr. Wilson, what I would urge us to do is to check the reality in terms of everybody's. What are we doing with the time cards and the hourly employees and keeping track of true hours that they're working? Because as you're well aware and Dr. Scott is aware, if they work and we sanction it, they're supposed to be paid.
Absolutely. I think there is absolutely, they should be paid. A lot of folks are being paid. If there are folks who are not being paid for what they are reasonably are staying after and being expected to do, that's just not right. And we either have to do better at the tracking and the documentation so that we can provide it so that our board can see what it is that they need to see.
But this is something I lived, and if you have to wait till the summertime to take your comp time, let's be real. I lived it. And I'm not trying to be difficult here. I'm just saying, let's be fair. I lived it. You have to take it during the summertime.
So right now, there are all of our administrators except the K Center are in the room. They've heard this conversation. I've seen heads nod in certain directions. So the heads nodding, Mr. Wilson will follow up on. I'm not saying they were nodding in favor or against, but they were all nodding in the same direction, which seems to sanction that we understand what we're doing. That's, and we'll report back what is happening. But the building administrators should generally be not the first one in the building, but should be there prior to clerical staff getting into the building, and generally should be there after. Dr. Ryan, don't make the faces. It should be there, in my judgment, it should be there after clerical staff leave. That's the nature of administration.
I had a quick question just to add on. I mean, it should be quick, but, so I was just looking at this, just the list of the overtimes, and the only one I can't understand is what is the technician salary under guidance services? So who is that?
That would
Like,
likely
not
be.
who specifically, but like, what job is that? That they're getting all this overtime?
With no budget.
That's going to probably be.
That's to be the registrar.
4,000.
I was going to think registration or.
Yeah, it says it's under guidance.
But there's no budget.
And it says technician
They have
salary.
no budget in their line.
Evan,
Oh,
because
yeah, they don't have.
it's
no budget.
possible. So that's a good question.
Yeah, but why
Some
they don't
folks
have a
may
budget?
not have. There may be some departments that don't budget for it, right? Because they typically don't use it. So they're not putting anything against the account that's set up to hold money for overtime, because in their pattern or their trend, they don't really use it. So if you see zeros on that first line, which is the budgeted amount,
right.
that's because that administrator says we typically don't use it for
But
us.
who is, but
What job is
what
that?
job? We're asking clearly.
Is that a
facts. What job
secretary? Is
The,
that,
the technician, I want to say, without taking the code and
We'll have
matching
to-
it up with
we'll have to
what we
look
have
at it.
over there, in the accounts, we have hundreds of accounts. But
10, 2370?
So, I guess I have a question. Wouldn't that throw
143.
off the budget then? If you're not budgeting money,
What'd you do? Turn your page?
So you
if you're
have
not
to-
budgeting money into the budget and then you need to take money out of the budget, isn't that throwing your budget off?
So you have to
can't
take
have
it
it
out of
both ways.
another budgeted
what I'm
category.
saying.
So you do a transfer.
Right, so you do a transfer, but wouldn't that throw off other parts of the budget? That's what I'm asking.
You would have to do a transfer to avoid overspending.
Right.
So if the question's around overspending, to avoid overspending, if we go over in one line item, we have to do a budget transfer out of an account where there's money to cover it. And so if the overtime is not anticipated, and right now in business office, there's overtime that has to take place because a salary position we're down. And so we would then be able to transfer, because there will be savings out of that salary position being down that will cover, more than cover, the amount of the overtime in that position. That's the reality. For the business office, that position impacts HR, impacts the business office. I think that's the two areas it impacts. So that's some of the overtime. Guidance, pupil services, if we're doing registration, we have to get it done. We were down, have been down a staff person in our registration child accounting office. Person got injured, a leave of absence has been approved. That position we are down, part of the time we have to cover with overtime, the expectation. But that's the reality. Instead of, we can't sub, and I asked that question, can we bring somebody in that could do this position? The answer was no, not easily. There's nobody that has the ability to do penimation, to do the power schools that this position requires. So that is part of what we have to do in terms of covering this position, which has already gone a month and will continue for another month. So there's items like that comes up. So it's not necessarily overspending with overtime. Sometimes it's actually saving money because we're down a position. We're covering a leave of absence that is medical that we have to cover without filling the actual position. The accounting is one of them. Other times, though, things come up, and if it's a hourly employee, we have to compensate them. We should not be having a person work 10 hours and being paid for 8. A salary person can work 58 hours and be paid for that, but an hourly employee should be compensated. Okay. Other questions?
I have a question, please. An employee, like Ms. Irons said, she was had a conversation, with the parent, which meant that she had to stay after the time that she was supposed to clock out. The supervisor may know or may not know that she is in the office with a parent past working hours. How does anyone know, HR or whoever pays her, that she was there from the time that she was supposed to leave until whenever she's finished with the parent? Is there something that can be done through the computer that when she leaves, she can type in whatever that she's leaving now? Or because if the clock is locked, she cannot do it by sliding and punching out? What can be put in place to secure that that person, that employee, will receive that overtime, whether the supervisor knows about it or not?
And so the supervisor has to be made aware of it. That's the reality. Whether or not that has happened or does happen is a good question. Seeing some heads shaking again. But the supervisor, the direct supervisor, has to authorize the extra time. And that's in all departments. That's the only way we are going on time clock or whatever it is.
Then who does it if the supervisor is not there that day?
Supervisor has to be made aware of it. That's.
So we're doing away with comp time. We're going to pay the ladies.
The supervisor has to be made aware. Comp time, we have to have a fuller discussion about that. The reality is we have to make the person whole. Making the person whole can be paying them or recognizing that a individual may work an extra half an hour today and not work a half an hour tomorrow.
I agree. Just so they don't have to wait 6 months to take comp time.
I hear what you're saying. I would agree.
Thank you.
Stephen, the code that I think was shared out loud, and I thank you, Dr. Ryan, for bringing a book in. And just didn't have one up here handy with us. I believe that is what we were alluding to earlier, Joan, in that registration, in the registration department. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So it's a registration.
Ms. Joan.
For at the end of the summer, putting in transportation information, putting in enrollment information so we can get up and running. This year, with the reality of a leave of absence in that department, there will be some additional compensation, but there also will be some looking at how that whole budget gets made whole because a person is out, and whether that person, we have to pick up the pieces for that person's job.
Stephen, if I can just add, for the sake of, I don't want anyone to misread my my actions or my responses to things that I am asked. The reality, whether it's me or anyone in the human resources, all of our jobs are absolutely important and unique. The work that you have charged me to do here, and I appreciate it and thank you. And I continue to be honored by the trust that you have found in me. It's difficult though, because the reality of it is the human resources office in every organization can often be an office that causes folks a good amount of anxiety or angst, because we have to at all times do our very best to help and sometimes try our best to protect the organization to the best of our abilities from risk. And sometimes, no, not sometimes, often, that can be helped by just greater communication as to why, certain things are responded to in a certain way, or why there's reluctance, when it comes to certain things. So when you feel that reluctance, if you feel that reluctance to any of our board members, I really hope that I'm far better with conversations than email, because certain things just can't be teased out through characters on an email screen, to get a full understanding of here's at least what I'm thinking and here's what it is. And then, like I often do, I typically say, well, let's have more conversation about this later. And I think I have responded that way to say I would prefer more conversation later, because email just doesn't do it justice. A lot is lost in communication when the end goal is really to protect the organization at all times, and sometimes that means from itself. And that's the life of HR. So thank you.
Madam President, may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
That we get together as a board and have a conversation about, ever since I've been on this board, I've always talked about, employees come to me about how they feel about the district, even after they're gone, if they're in here, whatever, that we come to some type of understanding, and Dr. Bush has been trying to do this with having a better environment for employees. So, I think one way you can do that is to maybe craft a handbook. If my job gave me a binder 14 years ago, at this point I got 150 binders. No one's looking at this. I did bring a copy of my handbook from my job. It is on our intranet. So no employee in our, as we call it, the network, can ever say they didn't know, or, oh, I didn't have a reference point for it. So I'm just suggesting that when we have a retreat, if we're going to have a retreat, that maybe we should think about this as a board. Because really, who has their binder from when they first started at a place?
That was one of the questions I had asked, and a couple of the board members had come to me with the same concern. And Dr. Butts, I'm going to make that request now, that the board has a retreat, which will also include the administrators of your building. And I will get in touch with someone from PSBA also to come down to make, to go over anything that is of importance. And Mr. Diori, I would like for you to be there also.
Okay. So along the lines of the budget, I know that this is the time for a child fine for special education, and I know that according to how many IEPs are in compliance, that's how the state is paying districts for, okay, you can get the amount. So what I would like to know for Dr. Butts and Ms. McGlynn, for the December board meeting, can we have a report from that includes each school's number of compliance? Okay.
So in the board report is a listing of all the special education students. And our goal every year with child accounting and child find is everybody that's on that report is in compliance prior to the child find report to the state. So my expectation, I know Ms. McGlynn and Ms. Smythe were working very late on a Thursday snow day, thinking that the board was to meet to make sure that every child that is in our special education program meets the criteria to be counted with child find. That has been their task the last 2 years. Previously, Dr. Brown did that task, and having overseen special education for quite some time. That's the task of every district, is to get everybody in compliance prior to the deadline, make sure all IEPs, all NORAPs, everything that we need are done. And I can guarantee they are individually, all 800 and however many students that we have, they are individually lining up the name, lining up every data point and making sure it matches. And that has been a task that they've been working on for quite some time. So back to the request. So in the board report, under the principals, there will be a special education in each building. My expectation, I know Ms. McGlynn is here and Ms. Smythe also are aware that everybody in that report is counted. We will give an update in December about how many students were claimed in Child Find. We have to upload our students along with everybody else in the Commonwealth, and if we claim a kid that is not ours, somebody will take exception to that. If we don't claim a kid and somebody else claims them, but they're our kid, that's a problem, and we take exception at them claiming them. So there's a very detailed process, but I can guarantee the task that Ms. McGlynn and Ms. Smythe have over the next, actually they submitted it already, I believe, the first time, was to complete it, get everybody counted. It's called the December 1st count. Unfortunately, December 1st count now has evolved into like the mid-November count, and will be finalized around middle of December. So prior to, at the next board meeting, we can indicate these are the number of kids that we claimed in each category, in each area that needs to be reported to the state. I know we've been consistently in the between 750 and 870, something around there, over the last 12 years. So I would anticipate we're still there.
Is our compliance at 100%?
Our compliance is close to, when we get to December 1, close to 100%. There are a couple T's missing and I's that we have to dot, but the goal is, if there's an IEP, and everybody knows the dates, everybody knows this is crunch time, but if there are issues, we address them, and we attempt to account everybody that we're possibly counting. Now, to be fair, state funding covers probably under 10% of our special education costs. So we get $2 million. That's not right. We get, about $2 million in special education costs. We're 10% isn't fair. Let's bump it up to maybe 35% of our costs are covered by the state. But the other 70% or 65% are covered by us. So 2 million, we're easily, with special ed costs, 18, 19 million, I would imagine. So.
Steve, to be fair, I said, and to be fair, if those students and then your special ed students are out of district, so if they're going to charter school, if they're going somewhere else, that's money you have to send over there instead of us using it in the district as well.
Correct.
So you have to take that into consideration as well.
Right now, special education for out of district, we just updated ours, and it was around $30,000 per student. For a student that's attending a charter school and out of our student attending a charter school with special ed costs about $30,000. We had about $1.5 million budget for special education students in charter schools. So That's been the reality this past year. It has increased. So that's the special ed cost.
So, Stephen, am I correct in assuming that you're saying that we do claim we claim the charter school kids?
No, they claim. We have to pay for them.
So the charter school claims them and gets money for them, but then we
No,
still
they
have
don't.
to pay for them?
They don't get
no money for them.
Oh, they don't get money for them.
They get our tuition for them.
Yeah.
So they get tuition.
But we're not able to claim them.
Wow. So the child accounting.
And that's
So-
what they're trying to fight for.
So the child accounting piece is the charter school will bill us for the tuition for regular ed, special ed. And we are allowed to, we get money for regular ed students, basic ed subsidy, and money for special ed students, which is special ed subsidy. Part of that money is our students in district. Part of that money is charter school students. But reporting those charter school students, we don't report. The charter schools report. So as long as they're accurate, we do get some money from the state for charter schools to offset our costs. But the cost for a regular ed subsidy is about $6 per day. We're paying a lot more than $6 per day to a charter school if you divide a $10,000, $11,000 tuition for a regular school, charter school. I'm sure it doesn't come to $6 per day. It comes to be much more than that. The same way as special ed, divide 2 million divided by whatever our special ed population is, 800 kids, 900 kids. That comes out to be a dollar figure. I'm sure $30,000 is much more than that state subsidy. Okay?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. This has been a very informative, interesting board meeting tonight.
Thank you.
And on that note, I would like to say a few words for the holiday. I wish happy Thanksgiving to all students and employees of the district, and I hope that you enjoy your meal, or wherever that you spend that day. And I always say happy gobble gobble. What name? You better pronounce it. One moment, please.
Dr. Ryan. So we have a retirement on the agenda. No, not yours. We need help with the pronunciation.
Pronunciation of the last name, please.
So we want to recognize
Ms. Sespaniak.
Retirement of Ms. Sespaniak,
yes,
who's a building aide and has been with us for 13 years of service. So we do apologize for missing that earlier. So congratulations on the retirement.
And I know she'll enjoy her holiday. And on that, I'm going to give the announcements for the next meeting. The board organization meeting will be Monday, December 3, 2018 at 6 p.m. sharp. Board business meeting, which also references to what Dr. Butz said, that the information that he would like requested from the administrators or whoever would be on Thursday, December the 20th, 2018 at 7 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
So it's the latest.